Is this on? Oh, yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to listen to our stories. I have a little bit of a different story to tell you, but I want to start with a quote from Helen Keller. Helen Keller once said that there is no better way to thank God for your sight than by giving a helping hand to someone in the dark. I might get emotional. Helen Keller knew about darkness. She was struck at a very young age with blindness and deafness, and then she couldn't talk. Can you imagine being thrown into the dark like that as a child without any control of your own doing? I wonder if she thought she was cursed. God intervened in her life. He didn't keep her there, and he brought people to teach her, to train her how to learn and discover and how to get in contact with God-given destiny that she had. He pulled her out of the darkness into the light, and she influenced millions of people throughout her lifetime. So I too have known darkness from a different kind of blindness, born of secrecy and fed with lies, deception, and silence. And the silence started for me when I was 19 years old. I became pregnant. I was confused, and nobody talked about it, but my parents just ushered me to a hospital to sacrifice my child's life through abortion. And that event killed something inside me too, and yet I still had no one to talk to. Silence. A short time after this, when I was still 19, my mom shared a little secret she had. She said to me, "By the way, I tried to have you aborted." So that was a day that time stood still for me, and my head was spinning. And I always felt different, unwanted, unloved, lonely. I kind of had an odd childhood that way, even though I was in a big family. But I was relieved at least to know that there was an explanation. I would come to learn more about her story later in life, but until later, our little secret kept in the dark. So I fumbled along, and at age 25, I got pregnant again. I was hoping for life this time, but I gave my boyfriend the authority this time, and he decided to sacrifice our child at the altar of convenience, and I still had no one to talk to. So I have no idea what to do with the horror of that experience, so I went and worked in an abortion clinic, of course, to help other women. I would be that someone to listen, that someone to care and comfort and advocate. So I became pretty zealous. And I didn't know God at the time, and I'm really grateful he knew me. And I kind of question now if he had a plan for me because of my zeal and my brokenness to try to bring him over to his team. Turns out that he did, because he intervened dramatically in my life. He saved me from dying really in a near fatal car accident, and he sent an angel messenger to tell me I was going to be okay. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but I'll tell you, it was real. And later, he removed me from the darkness in San Francisco where I was staying and took me to rural Alaska to finish my graduate program. So I would discover that he had something very special for me in rural Alaska and in Alaska. I worked among the Alaska Native people, and they had a real and authentic way of being, and I was so attracted to it, so I ended up staying. But I was still searching for love, and I got pregnant again. Some family members were advising me to have another abortion. The culture of death was nipping at my heels once again. But something inside me was strong now, and maybe the angel visit was why. But I felt strong, and I wasn't going to allow anybody to take authority over my decision this time. So I said, no, not this time. My son, thankfully, was born. 4 months later, I found myself alone with him in my friend's apartment who had introduced me to Jesus. That evening, feeling desperate, convicted, and very much in tune with the fact that I needed help and love, I got on my knees and I asked Jesus, I surrendered my life to him. In Christ on that day, the darkness and secrecy of that curse of abortion that had followed me ever since I was in my mother's womb was broken once and for all eternity. So people had failed me in my life, yes, but God knit me together in my mother's womb. And I had come into his presence, the very same God that had protected me 30 years earlier in the womb, when my mom was extremely vulnerable. And I had a talk with her eventually. And early in February of 1949, my mom found herself in a very dark place. Because of circumstances beyond her control, she lost her beloved husband in a plane crash. They had 4 children already, all under the age of 6. I was the 5th. With grief directing her way, she was convinced that her life would be easier after that trip to Mexico, where a doctor performed a D&C abortion, which took my twins' life, but was intended to take mine also. I believe God's mercy was there that day in that room. For me, yes, but mostly for my mom. She was terribly grieved at the loss of her husband. You can see, I was there, I know. And a few weeks later, her doctor would confirm that she was 4 months pregnant. So that day in late February 1949, God saved my life. In July 1981, he saved me again and gave me a new life. But wait, something still wasn't resolved for me. How could I reconcile the part of losing 2 children to abortion, working in an abortion clinic, and also being a survivor of an attempted abortion? That's been a tough one for me. And when I reached out to Melissa at ASN about 2 years ago, I could not imagine where that was going to take me. And the family I've met at ASN. But the healing workbook that Melissa has written, some of which is painfully difficult to get through, but it's been incredible medicine for my soul. I had not seen the direct connection between my behavior and the trauma caused by the abortion attempt. And as I continue to address and talk about these untold truths, which I want to emphasize, nothing was talked about. It was kept silent. And that's my message for tonight. We have to talk about these things, like I'm doing tonight. And also, I am receiving a deeper work of God's grace in my life. So, as with Helen Keller, I've been pulled from the darkness into the light, from being a prisoner of secrets, lies, and deception, to being a speaker for the truth that we have in Christ Jesus. And I thank you so much for coming tonight.